Welcome back to the second season of the Irish Song and Recitation Festival. We've got another episode in our trilogy with Michael Collier, and it's really been a treat. And today I'm going to try to get out of him something about the origins of Irish dance, how it came to America, just what's going on with it today, how it's changed over time, and some of Michael's experiences in America in, all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast. So no matter where you're at out there, you're going to enjoy this one because there's going to be something in it from you. Michael, glad to have you back.
Oh, great to be back.
I know.
Thank
Gosh,
you.
the festival ends up, it's just 2 more days and it's done, and you'll be flying off to what do you call home?
Well, right now I'm living in the Boston area.
Right. And are you active in the Irish community there?
Oh, there's certainly a lot of Irish in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of Irish dancing and music and song and story and everything else.
Well, you know, that reminds me that you've been involved in the Irish community and dancing in, I know out in Berkeley and in Kansas City and now out in Boston and probably some other areas. Can you contrast and compare those communities, what they've been like in your personal experience?
Now, it's really interesting to see the difference between the West Coast and the East Coast. The West Coast, San Francisco, certainly has an old Irish community. They have an Irish cultural center, well supported by the landed families.
Right.
But what I found was that there are many people do things sort of spontaneously there. That is, individuals. There's a friend of mine by the name of Larry Lynch who got started with the set dancing. In fact, he really was one of the first in the revival of set dancing to get started teaching it back in the early 80s, even maybe 79, I think he may have started. That was before I got there. I arrived there in 81.
Right.
And started taking up the set dancing there in 82. And also I started doing ceilidh dancing in another location, a pub. Again, just a group of people who were teaching ceilidh dancing.
Right.
So it was much more these individuals, a few pubs here and there, the Starry Plow in Berkeley, the Plow and Stars in San Francisco.
Yeah, I remember that the one time I was out there. I go, where did all this come from? Plowy Stars, Star and Plow. What's the story behind that phrase?
There was the play by Singh, the Plow and Stars, and he got it from the constellation stars, which we refer to as the Big Dipper. But in Irish mythology, that is the plow. And the 7 stars are the 7 plow oxen. And if you look at old maps from Renaissance times, you will see the north referred to as Septentrionalis. I don't know what the hell.
Yeah,
what that?
Yes.
The septen from septem, 7,
right,
and trionalis from Taurus, bull. So they knew about this 7 plow oxen, 7 bulls up there.
And so there then comes the Starry Plow and the Plowy Star.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
well, now go on with the story about Frisco.
So anyway, I started dancing in these 2 locations from 2 different groups, and others would dance in different places. We danced in different places. We had a performance ceilidh group for a while, ceilidh dancing.
So how is that now? I know when you get up and dance in a pub, it's a lot of fun and people are having fun. And then there's another kind of dancing that's really performance dancing, step dancing.
Yeah, the modern step dancing was done in schools. It's derived from old step dancing, but it has evolved because it's been in official competition. There's the step dance, the dancing commission, and they define the rules. They define the schools and their territories. Yeah, they're territorial. You can't change schools without competition rules that say you have to wait.
Right.
And they have the fancy costumes.
Right.
And they decided they had to have curly hair because your presentation was very important.
Well, that's right. But do you think that curly hair is really an Irish thing? It looks like Little Lord Fauntleroy has sold them all a wig.
That's 19th century stuff. Certainly in the earlier days of step dancing in the 20th century, they didn't do that.
That's right. It's sort of a modern affectation.
Yeah, and these days, they used to go through incredible work to get the girls' hair like that.
Yeah.
And now they just buy wigs.
That's right. Well, that sort of sounds British, doesn't it? Like those little judges that would sit up on there and put their white wigs on.
It almost does, doesn't it?
I'm telling you, maybe we ought to start a movement.
Yeah, like those wigs move up and down when the girls are dancing.
That's right.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think it's distracting from the dancing myself.
It is a bit. It's pretty, but are you there for being pretty, or are you there for the dance? Well,
yeah.
I guess they're there for both.
That's competition and performance dancing.
That's right. And they can dance me under the table, so I better just be quiet.
Yeah, whereas learning the sets and the Ceilidh dancing for the fun of it. I mean, you can have Ceilidh dancing for competition too, and they do in the schools. But just for the fun of it is just great exercise, movement to the fantastic Irish music is wonderful. So that's where I got started doing all of that.
That's right. And boy, you run through it's an athletic event almost when you don't stop in between much.
Oh, it certainly can be.
Yeah.
Get your heart rate up to target heart rate real quick, like.
Now now when you were out there by the Star and Plows and all that, that was what, 30 years ago?
I got started in '82, and I lived in the San Francisco area in Berkeley until '93. So I moved out of there in '93.
And how do you find, if you looking at the rest of the country where you've been, how do you make comparisons?
Well, first I went down to Southern California, lived in Redlands, Loma Linda, and it's about 60 miles inland from L.A.
Right.
They refer to the area as the Inland Empire. I guess because it's conquered by L.A., maybe. I'm not sure. And there I just found a group of Irish and Irish Americans, got people together, and we started doing dancing. And, again, just my house and other people's houses.
Right.
The group there was very enthusiastic because they had some things going. I mean, it wasn't like they weren't doing anything.
Right.
And so we had a couple of Ceilidhs, inviting, through the Hibernian group there and others. And made connections with people who did old-timey American, because there's a great connection there. Mm-hmm. A lot of American country culture came from the British Isles, from Irish and Scottish and English dancing and music. I was there only for a couple of years before I got the job up in Boston. And so now up in Boston, which has an incredible number of Irish and Irish Americans, but you go to a Ceilidh there and half the people are from Ireland.
Right.
So now, because they are so closely connected to Ireland, like I heard one person talking one time about his experience of coming to the U.S. and looking for a place to stay, he was pointing out that he did not identify himself as coming from Ireland, but as coming from Cork.
Yeah.
So when he went to one section of town and was looking for a place and talked to an Irish person, and the woman says, where are you from? He says, I'm from Cork. She says, well, what are you doing here? This is Galway people up here. The Cork people live down in the other section of town.
And I thought that was only good 100 years ago, but it's still here.
That's still there. And so there are many more societies, many more organizations in the Boston area.
Right.
Ladies and Lords of St. Finbar, that's Cork. The Leitrim Society, the Leitrim people. And others like that.
I wonder, the size of these groups, do they stay sort of small, and then that's why there's so many of them?
I'm not sure of the complete size of these groups. There's a Dublin group, but they could have a few dozens, of people in them.
Yeah, and your dance groups probably the same thing, anywhere from 10 to 30, or?
Most of the Ceilidhs get from 3 or 4 sets up to now 6.
And how many people are in a set?
8. So it's a square format dance.
Okay.
Not as many as there used to be. Mm-hmm. In the late 90s, it peaked. And then we would have a dozen or more sets at a Ceilidh.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And the people who do it now are the people who started then and a little bit earlier and are older.
Yeah, just like all of us.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's amazing to me to realize when I look around that I have been dancing now 26 years,
right.
starting in 82. I've been doing set dancing longer than maybe 90% of the people who are doing set dancing now.
Yeah,
and I feel like I'm just beginning really to learn the old dances of these people.
It is amazing. Now, what about Kansas City compared to the West or the East Coast? What kind of Kansas City's sort of good for the Midwest representation. What do you see a difference?
Well, certainly there are many fewer people here in the Midwest than there are on either coast. And so there hasn't been the continuous tradition of music and dance. It's been a little bit thin. In fact, it's been quite thin.
Yeah.
Especially in the dance, the folk dance category. There's been a few musicians, not many keeping the dance music alive, more singers like pub ballads and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a little sad that they haven't had the continuity.
Yeah, they've got such a festival now that's coming up. It's really big, and there's a lot more interest coming in from all angles, so maybe it will have a revival.
There are quite a few festivals around. The Kansas City Festival, the Weston Festival, the Missouri River Festival.
Right.
All of which are aspects of Irish traditional culture. But they don't have, it's not like they have a ceilidh in the middle of the festival where people can just get up and dance.
That's right. People don't quite understand it. There's a hardcore that does, but it hadn't quite spread into the community.
Yeah. And a lot of these dances, well, you do have to spend time to learn them.
Right.
In Ireland, people learned them from their parents and their grandparents, and they did them. You know, as children, they would get into them. And that doesn't exist anymore around here.
How about the dance in Ireland? Has that changed in the last 20 years?
It's very interesting. Of course, yes, it has. The sets, the square format dances, it had come into Ireland in the 19th century, starting following the Napoleonic Wars. They came in as the French quadrilles, because they'd started in France. They were taken up first by upper classes, the English ascendancy.
Right.
But the Irish love dancing music, so a new dance form, hey, we'll jump onto that.
Yeah.
They took them, put them to Irish steps and to Irish music. The first published was in like 1826. There were about 4 of these quadrilles published by somebody named Payne.
Right.
They became very, very popular in the late 19th and into the 20th century. But then there was the Celtic Revival beginning in the 1890s. And the Gaelic Athletic Association started Gaelic football and other Irish sports as a revival. They also got into the language as a revival to preserve it. And they got into the dance, even though they didn't know a whole lot about dancing.
Right.
So they decided that these sets simply weren't Irish. They came from France, after all, and you can't do them. They decided that waltzing was not Irish. That came from the continent. Can't waltz.
Couldn't include it.
So they looked around for traditional Irish dancing, and as a folk dance, there really wasn't anything else.
Yeah.
They had the schools at the time doing the step dancing and the figure dances. Might be 2 couples or 4 couples or 8 couples doing figure dances. And so in the first modern ceilidh, in the modern sense of a group at a dance hall,
right,
the people did ceilidh dances and so forth, but they did sets because sets were the thing. That's all they had.
Yeah.
They didn't really do what we call ceilidh dances. They had to invent those. Because they invented the traditional Irish ceilidh dancing in the early 20th century, created the Irish Dance Commission, which wrote a couple of books and said, these are Irish dances. So if you do ceilidh dances like the Walls of Limerick and the Siege of Venice, those were composed about that time.
That's right. Isn't it funny about how much was that we consider ancient traditional, if you were just thinking about it? It actually was started at the beginning of the 20th century.
There's
the baran, that Irish drum they hold in their arms, that wasn't invented until about 1910 or, give or take 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I don't know of any use of it. Maybe there were drums like it. I mean, these things are all derived from something.
Yeah.
Even the Irish were addicted to dancing going back into Elizabethan times at the least, even older. And they did their country dances, as has been described, but nobody described the dances.
Yeah.
But we know a little bit about English country dancing. The couples, the men face women in a long set.
Right.
So that format existed. So the Ceilidh dances are derived from that format of English country dancing, although we don't know exactly what most of those things were.
Yeah.
But we know something about them. So the commission decided that those would be traditional Irish dances and not the sets.
Right.
And people getting up to do sets at a GAA Ceilidh were told to sit down.
Oh, they were looked down upon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then there was the Irish Dance Halls Commission and the Irish Dance Halls Act in the 30s, which prevented a lot of local house dances and house music. Because the government wanted to license dance halls for monetary, financial reasons.
Sure.
And a lot of others, including the church, took that as a way of gathering these events into parish halls, where then they would not allow sets. They would just do the Ceilidh dances.
Yes, yes. Well, I knew the parish hall had a strong tie to the people, and I always knew that the dancers or the Ceilidhs was tied to the parish hall. Even here in America, a lot of parish halls were used.
Yeah.
So it goes way back, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then just because of modern culture, a lot of traditional folkways were lost. But then there was a revival. It started in the 70s, a little bit of competition. When sets were finally allowed into competition, they were completely excluded from competition by the Dance Commission. And then at the Willie Clancy Summer School, in 1982, they decided that besides the music, they would also start having dancing, especially the sets, and help revive those. There was one particular dancer, Joe O'Donovan, who was chosen to lead this competition, lead this revival, and many people from Dublin called themselves Brooks Academy, started collecting some of them. Unfortunately, they didn't dig deep enough to find the old sets, because there are a lot of them that some of these people had never done for 10, 20 years.
Oh, sure.
They got the competition versions and wrote those down. And they made a few mistakes, too, when they wrote it down.
Yeah.
So the first publication of sets for ever, probably was in 84.
Good gosh, that's
Dublin.
so recent.
Yeah. And then the same guy I mentioned in San Francisco, Larry Lynch, spent the decade of the 80s. He really did go to the local communities, and he went back more than once to find and get people to remember and to do really the old versions of sets that they'd been doing when they grew up.
Yeah.
And it took more than one trip, because he would say, what did you do? And they would tell him something. He said, oh, well, let's get up and do it. And they'd get up and do something else.
Yeah.
Because I really think there is a muscle memory to get into these things. Mm-hmm. And so it took a few times for him for everybody to remember sets. But he wrote down and published finally in 1989 a book on the set dancing in Ireland, theory and evolution.
Was that Come Dance With Me, or was that, what was the name
that
of
was his motto, to lead tours in Ireland to meet these people.
Yeah.
And having been on a few of those, just fantastic to meet these people in their pubs, in their homes, even, to dance with them, talk with them, listen to them play and sing and recite. Just fantastic.
And that's by Larry Lynch, was the guy that wrote the books.
Yes, he wrote that book. He wrote that one book.
Okay.
Set Dancing in Ireland's Tradition and Evolution.
Okay, good.
And that is the only book with their stories. I mean, he allowed those people just to speak through that book.
Oh, that's a good one then.
Saying their words,
their
language, and telling what songs, what speed they would dance, their words, and describing the dances.
And what about you? Just a little bit before I saw you out there, you're talking about people with the Irish and the music today and the dancing, and you were talking about Sean Nós dancing. Now, what's that? I've heard of Sean Nós singing.
Yeah, Sean Nós literally means old style, so it could be old style anything. In the last few years, the Sean Nós step dancing has become revived and become popular. It had survived in Connemara and a few other places. Connemara is a place where the Sean Nós singing had also survived. People like Joe Haney, had.
And what I always think of Sean Nós is one person.
One person, that's right. So Irish singing is basically a cappella, one person, and the Sean Nós dancing is a type of solo step dancing. Now, like in the old dancing, where people would dance down on the floor, low steps, no kicking up like the modern step dancing, the rhythm on the floor was everything. You danced to the music, enhanced the rhythm of the music with your steps. And in, ages past, in centuries past, you would take a half door off and put it down on the dirt floor and dance on that. Or then people would build a small stage for the dancers to dance. And so that's been enjoying a revival. It's something you can't completely teach because it's spontaneous, it's impromptu.
A little bit like jazz almost.
It has a lot of that kind of feel to it. You have certain basics, a few basic steps, for instance.
Right.
And you put these together, invent your own if you want.
Would these steps, would they be like 3s and 7s, just turned around any way you want to, or what?
You can do that, but the rhythm, the percussiveness on the floor, you step on the floor to get that sound. And so it's, actually, I generally don't have a hard sole shoe. Not metal taps, mind you, but just a hard leather and a wooden floor. And you get this tap, not to overcome the music, but to tap with the music.
Right.
And you do it differently depending on the tune that's being played.
And it could be never twice the same.
Never twice the same. That's absolutely right.
Now, if somebody wanted to see that happen live, where would they go?
That's difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's just getting into the U.S. There are only about 3 teachers that I know of who teach this in the U.S. And I've been lucky enough to be living in the Boston, where one teacher, Karen Jordan, teaches, and I've taken classes from her.
Right.
Malden Meehan lives out in Seattle.
Yeah.
And another teacher lives down in the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay.
Whose name I can't remember right now.
Sure. Well, we can put that on the blog.
And, there may be a few others picking it up now to teach, but mostly, you want to take a few lessons, maybe learn a few steps, get the feel of it a bit, and then just do your own thing.
Yeah, it's not intensive book learning, so to speak. It's like you hear it, you feel it, you do it.
Now, Kieran and Malden and another dancer in Ireland have a video on disc, on DVD.
Oh, good.
Called the 12 Steps.
Yeah.
Which they give you 12 steps to learn.
So that's the easy way to go. Now, what was the name of those again?
So, Kieran Jordan, Malden Meehan, and Ronan Regan.
Okay.
And Ronan lives in Ireland. In fact, I saw him a couple of summers ago back when I was there. Went to a class that he was teaching at a festival.
Oh, good. And they've got a CD.
And they have a DVD.
A DVD. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Visual,
you can see it.
And you can see it.
Oh, my.
Which they teach 12 steps. That's great. That doesn't mean that you would do exactly those 12 steps.
You just mix and match.
Mix and match. Take those as building blocks.
Sure.
To do the Sean Nós step dancing.
Oh, boy. That sounds like the newest revival, doesn't it?
It is. And it's being taught also at the Willie Clancy Summer School for the last few years now.
Right. And that's in Ireland.
That's in Ireland, in Milltown, Malbay, the first week in July.
Right.
Mick Mulcairn and his wife teach those, and a few others teach some older style step dancing also. Not spontaneous, but they're also the older steps that you can learn,
right?
Which are not spontaneous like Sean Nós step dancing, but nevertheless are still down on the floor, batter the rhythm, but are specific steps.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. What else is happening in today?
Okay, well, in the revival of sets, interestingly enough, when I was started taking and learning sets in the 80s, many of the dancers felt that the musicians who were not playing for dancing were playing too fast. And dancers would like it a little slower because the bands, the revival bands were starting. Bothy Band, Dana and Planksty had grown in the 70s, Alton and others. But as the revival went on in the 80s and the 90s, people came into the dancing, and they're city people, urbanized people. They like things fast.
Yes.
So these days, they would complain if the music isn't fast enough. And maybe just because of the name Ceilidh Band, in Ceilidh now, where you do sets, they have to have a Ceilidh Band.
Yes.
I acknowledge I don't particularly like Ceilidh bands.
Yeah. Because why?
Well, because they'll have a drum set, snare drums and bass drum and
like a rock and roll band.
Almost rock and roll or jazz band.
Yeah.
They would have keyboards.
Oh, too modern.
And as well as a few traditional instruments. And then you have the stringed instruments, the bouzouki, the bandolin, guitar.
You said bouzouki. Why is the bouzouki tied into Irish music?
It's interesting. It started in the 70s when a couple of musicians picked up the Greek bouzouki. And I don't know all the details of exactly how it was changed to use in Irish music. Irish music is frequently what's called modal. It's not just the major modes and minor modes. It has several of the modes that were used in medieval church music.
Right.
And so it doesn't always use or have the full chords that you would find in pop music or modern music. So some of these instruments can be adapted to using just partial chords. And good musicians who want to accompany Irish music do that, and you can do that with those instruments.
Okay.
And I'm not a musician, so I don't know all the details of how you do that.
Sure.
But if done right, it's not bad. I'm still not a great favorite of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Because basically, you don't need them.
Yeah.
If you have great musicians playing the fiddle, flute, whistle, the box or melodeon, concertina, and the Irish pipes, the uilleann pipes.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else.
That's true, and it gives it its own flavor.
It does, and if you play like people used to play for dancing, you can actually play all the notes, and you can get in the ornamentation and that feeling that comes from the grace notes, gracing the basic tune.
Yeah.
And you hear some of the fast Ceilidh Band dance music. They can't even get in all the tune notes, let alone any ornamentation to it. And people really like continual battering in many cases, just continual pounding the floor.
Yeah.
And I've been to Ceilidhs where there would be 50 sets on the floor.
I mean, oh my gosh.
That much. And you can't hear the music.
Yeah, it just becomes a group bang there, really. Just, oh my.
Yeah, traditionally, Irish music and dance were done in homes, in a pub, small groups, small number of musicians.
Pretty fast, would you say? I'd say maybe.
Some would be fairly fast. I mean, it would be lively.
Yeah.
But in enough time to dance.
Yeah, to enjoy yourself at the same time.
And also, I'm afraid, in a lot of the modern dancing, a lot of the rural variations were lost or are being lost.
Oh, I bet.
In Clare, they developed a style and a step to go with their reels. And they through the 20th century, they began to like reels more and more. A lot of those old dances were done to polkas and jigs that are now done to reels.
Oh.
And they developed a style for those reels, which is, the style of dancing goes with the music. It just fits, and you can feel it. Down in Kerry and Cork, they love their polkas and their slides, as well as their jigs. And when they play reels, they dance, the reels sound different than Clare reels.
Uh-huh.
And if they play polkas in Clare, and they do, their polkas are different from Kerry and Cork polkas.
Oh, I've seen people almost come to blows at dance instructions. Say, no, it's not the way we do it in Cork. No, it's not the way we do it in Clare.
Yeah.
Oh, and you better make a choice quick.
So it's great to keep that kind of stuff. That's the the spice in it. That's the life in it, to know all these variations, because then you can dance with the music.
Yeah, and it's been brought down to a science. I mean, or an art. It's just different.
It's different, yeah. In art, it's interesting how they developed.
Gosh, we're coming at the end of this segment. Finish it up here. We got 5 minutes or so. What do you think? What would you like to tell folks that they're in need of hearing?
Well, what I would say is one thing. If you go to one place and you learn a dancing or a way of dancing, same is true for songs and music, it's not everything. You're learning one type, and you have to be open and ready. If you go some other place, they may do things differently.
Yeah, that's right.
I was talking with one friend about back in Boston. He's from West Clare, from Doolin, and his growing up in Clare. We were talking about sets, as he's a dancer.
Right.
He talked about he learned the Caledonian set that they did. And he was invited to go down to another place. And I'm talking 10 miles.
Yes.
20 miles. He said he went down there thinking he could just jump into the Caledonian set. But they did it differently there. And it's true. You go to Kerry and Cork, you do one place where they called their dance the polka set. You go 5 miles down the road, they did the polka set, but it was different.
Hold it. It was sort of like that might be descended from the old Irish chieftains, where every little barony had a chief. And, it used to be something if you were a king in a country, it meant something. But the way it came down to Ireland, it's like it must have been 20,000 kings all at the same time.
And right into modern days of transportation, right up to that, people would grow up and never go 10 miles beyond their hometown.
Yeah.
Community.
And that created these little experimental area where they developed their own culture, all within a small region.
A dance master would go in the 19th century, 20th century. People grab onto the dances that he had to bring.
Yeah.
Then they would adapt it, begin doing it their own way.
That's right.
Things.
They take now. Are there dance masters left?
There are modern dance masters who have come into learning and teaching in the revival. They teach revival versions of the sets. There has been a terminology and a language which is pretty sort of universal, partly. The Dublin group decided that they needed to be arbiters and creators of the dance language. I mean, Terry Moylan says this in his first book,
right?
Because he found people in individual areas referring to the same movement by different words.
So you couldn't even have a conversation and have it work.
You'd have trouble with that.
Yeah.
You get over it, but you'd have trouble with that.
Mm-hmm.
So they created their language. Unfortunately, they misunderstood some of the basic concepts of the language of the people, and but they created their own and published it in their books. But this is Ireland. That doesn't work.
That's right. That's right. You can say anything you want.
Other people made other mistakes, started using other language for the same movements.
Yeah.
And then they would write it down. And then many of the teachers would pick up these books, and they would read that, and not having known the dancers in these areas,
right,
didn't know that the language is new. But anyway, so they use that language, the modern revival language,
sure,
and go around and teach at festivals and summer schools and other schools.
Is that in Ireland only or in America?
Around the world.
Oh, good.
Around the world. A few years ago, I was in Japan and met up with the Irish dancers in Tokyo and Kyoto, Osaka.
Yes, I got a couple of emails from them. I was surprised when I first saw that. I go, well, hey, that's all right.
I see some of them every year at the Willie Clancy Summer School. Well, they come every year. I only go every other year.
Well, they usually have an Irish pub there, too. Just about anywhere in the world you go that has a city, there's a Murphy's or a Callahan's or something of the like.
That's right, the Hill of Tara pub. And,
that's it for sure.
Dublin pub,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And and that's where you go. It's sort of like the old corner drugstore. You go to the Irish pub to see what's going on in the town, where you find the arts and the crafts and the people and the dances.
Yep, that's true. And one of the things I found out first is that everything that you heard about the number of pubs in Ireland was grossly understated.
Yeah.
Milltown Malbay, 2-block long road. That's the whole city originally. It's spread out from there now, but at least a dozen pubs.
Yeah.
Now, today's it's sad that many of those old pubs have gone under.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people in England too. The old Irish pubs are being not nationalized, but they're made in franchise type things.
One of the things about pub licenses is that there are a finite number of them.
Right.
And you own one, it is incredibly valuable. And so big corporations, franchises, can buy these when, say, the older generation who ran the pub dies and the children don't want to keep it up.
Right.
They want to go do their own thing. They can buy this. They take the license wherever they want. They can take it to the big cities, to Dublin, Cork, or growing cities, Galway and Ennis, and take it out of the rural context. And it's gone.
Well, that's right.
There's just nothing there.
Seems like I see something every couple of months. This old pub has been around for 50 or 60 years. It's gone.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody bemoans the fact, but there's no way to bring it back.
Yes. One pub license I know of that was, the children sold. I heard, and I can't verify it myself, it went for €500,000.
Oh, my.
That's the license. Not the building or the ground, just the license to have a pub.
Good gosh. Sounds like there's something wrong there. That sounds anti-Irish.
Yes.
It really does.
So it's hard to find those old pubs where just the local people gathered and did their set. That's one of the things I found out. Many of the sets have been given names for their local regions, but of course the people didn't have to name it after their area. I mean, they knew where they were.
That's right. That's exactly right.
They didn't have to talk about the Labashida set in Labashida. They did the real set. And so, in fact, first couple of times I was there and listened to people and watched sets, and people would say, okay, let's do a set. Let's do the set. I asked, what set are they going to do? And I asked, hey, what set are you going to do? And you might be able to say, oh, well, they're going to do the polka set. Well, which one? Well, it finally dawned on me that it meant very simple. They did their set. Yeah. The set they do in that pub in that region.
Right, and it's just well known. This is ours.
Yeah. They did a set.
Boy, that's fascinating. Boy, I tell you, you got so many stories. I can't believe it. You could go on forever. We could do a series of 10 just on what you've known and what you've seen. And you've been a dance master for Kansas City, coming back here every year.
Yeah, I try to get back here at least every other year. It's hard to get back.
No, that's right. But I know when you do, everybody says, "Oh, Michael's coming in. We're gonna where are we dancing and when?"
Yep.
And they all know that it's every day you can.
That's right.
I know. And your sister, and Molly is your sister. Molly here, she's around here pouring coffee somewhere, but her specialty is Irish coffee.
Yeah.
And when they see her coming, they say, "Oh, could you sneak behind the bar and make us some of your special coffee?" She does a good job, but boy, when she says you're coming in, everybody gets ready because it's an event.
Yeah, I've got a story of Molly behind a bar. I don't know what. Tell me.
I've heard of several.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's been good. We're going to do it again if we can, and sure appreciate your time and taking the time out. And I know, gosh, listen to them out there. Stomping their feet. Is that you they're stomping for? I bet it is.
That's right. A little battering out there.
A little introduction to the Sean Nós, I think it is. They're waiting for you to go out there and give them a little jazz interpretive dancing, would it be?
A little spontaneous battering on the floor there.
That's it.
Jig rhythm, real rhythm.
Well, that's good. Thanks a lot, and we're sure to hear more from you in the future. And until next time, this is Michael Laughlin at the Irish Song and Recitation Festival, year number 5.